Three men attacked a mafia boss in a restaurant. Then Waitress's hidden skill changed everything. The rain was relentless, turning the Harborline district into a slick mirror of blurred neon. Inside the Lark and Anvil, the light was warm, a deep yellow that clung to the dark wood and polished brass. It smelled of damp wool, old wine, and roasting garlic from his private, glass-walled room overlooking the pier. Silas Rourke watched the container cranes move like skeletal giants against the bruised night sky. His steak was untouched. His whiskey was not. The front bell chimed, a sound muffled by the storm. Three men entered. They did not shake the rain from their long coats. They did not look at the menu board. They moved with a shared, weighted purpose that soured the air. They dripped onto the herringbone floor tiles, their steps heavy and deliberate. Noah Quinn, short-haired and quiet, was polishing a glass behind the bar. The moment they entered, something in her clicked. It was not a thought. It was a cessation of thought. The noise of the dining room, the clink of silver, the low murmur of a Tuesday night crowd faded. Her world compressed. She froze the frame, an old reflex from a life she'd buried. Her gaze, trained by 1,000 hours watching high rollers from a two-way mirror, did not just see, it indexed. Man 1. His blink rate was off, too fast, asymmetrical. His right hand, hidden in his pocket, was rhythmically contracting, a gambler's tell for a bad hand or a drawn weapon. Man 2. He scanned the room, but his eyes skipped the exits. He was looking for someone, not out for himself. Under his left armpit, the cheap fabric of his suit jacket pulled just enough, the distinct, hard imprint of a pistol grip. Man 3. He was the anchor, watching the other two, his posture loose but ready. This was not a robbery. This was an insertion, and their target was obvious, the man in the glass box. It happened in the span of a breath. Man 2 reached under his coat. Noah did not hesitate. She was holding a heavy tray, set for table 4, a bottle of Barolo, 2 glasses, bread. She did not drop it, she used it. With a pivot that was more dance than defense, she sent the tray spinning. The heavy red wine bottle flew in a perfect high arc, spinning end over end, aimed not at his head, but at his hand. It connected with a wet, sickening crack of bone and glass. The bottle shattered against the wall as the first man screamed, his hand ruined, his weapon clattering uselessly. Simultaneously, her other hand shoved the heavy, wheeled food cart laden with desserts directly into the path of Man 2. The chrome cart hit his shins, the metal edge biting deep. He stumbled, his first shot going wild, exploding a row of whiskey bottles behind the bar, the air filled with the sharp, sweet smell of spilled bourbon and cordite. Chaos erupted, diners screamed and dove under tables. Man 3, the anchor, reacted. He grabbed the nearest diner, a woman in a pearl necklace, yanking her back as a human shield. He pressed a short-barreled weapon to her temple. "Nobody move, Rourke, show yourself." Silas Rourke was already standing in the shattered remains of his glass room. He was calm. He looked past the gunman, past the hostage. He looked at Noah. Noah's mind was cold. She analyzed the new problem, the hostage, Man 3. He was shielded, but her eyes found the anchor points she needed: the woman's earring, a heavy gold hoop, and a loose button on her coat, just below the gunman's arm. These were the points of leverage, the places the eye is drawn. She'd learned this trick from a street magician in Vegas, a man who could make a watch disappear while you were looking right at it. Her hand snapped to the wall panel, ripping the cover off the emergency lighting controls. She did not hit the alarm. She slammed her palm onto the junction box for the decorative lighting. The small, ornate chandelier directly above the gunman, a collection of heavy iron and glass, was not designed to fall, but its emergency magnetic clasp was. Noah shorted it. With a groan of metal, the fixture dropped 2 feet, then stopped. Held by its safety chain, it did not hit them. It did not need to. It was a sudden, violent intrusion in the gunman's sightline. He flinched, his head jerking up, his grip on the hostage loosening for a microsecond. That was all she needed. Silas Rourke watched, his expression unreadable as his own two bodyguards who had just begun to move stopped, following his silent, hand-chopped signal. He waved them back. He was watching her. Noah crossed the space. She did not run. She flowed. She moved into the gunman's blind spot as he tried to reacquire the hostage. She did not punch him. She did not kick him. Her left hand cupped his elbow. Her right hand pressed against the back of his shoulder. It was a casino security takedown, designed to be clean, to minimize lawsuits, to be brutally efficient without being overtly violent. She applied pressure, a joint lock. The man's shoulder rotated in a way it was never meant to. His fingers splayed open instinctively. The gun fell onto the carpet. Noah kicked it, sliding under the bar. She used his own momentum to spin him, slamming him face first into the wall, and held him there, her knee pressed into his spine. Silence. The only sounds were the rain, the sobbing hostage, and the drip of spilled whiskey. Noah backed away, her hands rising slightly, trying to melt back into the role of waitress. But it was too late. The police were not called. Within minutes, men in dark suits who were clearly not police arrived. They moved with quiet, professional efficiency. This was Silas Rourke's scene preservation team. Rourke had a history with the Federal Corporate Integrity Bureau, the FCIB, and he despised unresolved, noisy incidents. The two conscious gunmen were hauled to their feet. The one with the broken hand was pale. They were marched out a side door. Silas Rourke stepped out of his ruined room, brushing a shard of glass from the shoulder of his expensive suit. His men were handling the mess. He was focused only on Noah. He recognized the economy of her movements, the balance, the absolute lack of panic. That was not civilian self-defense. That was training. His gaze pinned her, an assessing, heavy weight that felt more dangerous than the gunman. Noah just wanted to leave, to run, to disappear back into the anonymous life she had built. She took a step toward the exit, but her eyes were drawn upward, an old habit, high in the vaulted ceiling, concealed in a decorative iron scroll, was a dome camera. A tiny red indicator light, one that should not have been on, blinked once. Someone else, somewhere far away, was watching. Silas Rourke did not ask. He gestured with his chin toward a narrow door behind the bar, a door Noah had always assumed was a closet, a word. His men, the silent ones who had materialized to clear the wreckage, parted to let her pass. The door opened into a wine room, a space so cold the air felt thin. It smelled of old oak, cork, and a sterile, dry metal tang that reminded her of a server room. The heavy, insulated door clicked shut behind her, the sound as soft and final as a latch on a cage. Silas stood by a rack of dark bottles, not looking at her, but at the reflection of the room in a polished silver ice bucket. The silence stretched, a tool he was clearly skilled at using. He let it build until she could feel the pulse in her own throat. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, devoid of the earlier chaos. Name. Noah Quinn, it's on the schedule. Where did you learn to do that? Noah kept her hands clasped loosely in front of her, her posture neutral. Here and there. You pick things up. You picked up a bottle of Barolo and used it to break a man's wrist. You shorted a fixture to disorient a second man, and you disarmed a third with a compliance hold. That's not picking things up. He turned, his eyes flat, analytical. Third question, why save me? They were going to shoot. Noah gave him the simplest, cleanest truth. It was bad for business, bad for tips. A ghost of a smile touched his lips and vanished. He did not believe her. A habit of observation, she added, the words feeling thin even to her. The door opened again, breaking the pressurized silence. A woman entered, all sharp angles and expensive tailoring. Holding a tablet, she smiled at Noah, a bright, practiced expression that did not reach her eyes. Silas, the main dining room is secured. The guests are being compensated. Pilar, this is Noah Quinn, Silas said. She was the incident. Oh, Pilar Knox, his chief operating officer said, her smile faltering for a second before snapping back, even brighter. "Well, thank heavens you were here. That was incredibly brave, or incredibly reckless." "She was neither," Silas cut in. "She was efficient." He turned back to the racks. They were professionals, which means this wasn't random. He looked at Pilar. "The smart container bid. It's tonight at 9. Pilar nodded, her face hardening. "We still hold the controlling vote. This changes nothing." "It changes everything," Silas countered. "Someone just tried to bid with bullets. They wanted me out of the running. Permanently." As Pilar spoke, gesturing with her tablet, her sleeve rode up, Noah's eyes, trained to catch the smallest detail, locked onto it, a faint, violet-purple ink smudge on the delicate skin of Pilar's inner wrist. It was not a smear, it was a stamp, partially wiped away. Noah recognized the specific, non-fluorescing ink. It was the kind used for high security, single-day access passes, the kind used at the data hub CityPort, and the stamp's edge, still visible, correlated to an entry-exit window between 6 and 8 p.m., right during the attack. Noah's phone vibrated in her apron pocket. It was a restricted number, a text message. She read it without moving the phone from her pocket, a skill learned in casino pits. "Don't trust the glass room. Eyes on the dome." Her blood went cold, the red light. "You deserve compensation for this," Silas was saying, pulling his wallet out. "No," Noah said, the words sharper than she intended. "I'm good." Silas paused, his hand in his jacket. "Everyone has a price, Miss Quinn. I just want to go home. I'm not this." He studied her for another long moment, then slid the wallet back. "Fine, but I'm changing your job description. I don't want you pouring wine anymore." He gestured vaguely to the restaurant. "I want you to stand in a corner I can't see." It was not a request. It was a statement. He was telling her she was now a blind spot, a piece on the board he did not understand and therefore wanted contained. "I'll think about it," she lied. "Go," he said, dismissing her. Before she left the main dining room, she paused. The red dome camera was still active. She looked at the scene, the overturned cart, the shattered Barolo bottle, the broken chandelier. It looked like a lucky, chaotic brawl. She walked to the cart with 2 precise movements. She angled its wheels slightly, moving it from the place she had pushed it to a new position, one that made the gunman's stumble look like a simple accident. She nudged a broken piece of the bottle with her toe, sliding it under a table, obscuring the trajectory. She made her precision look like luck. She was rewriting the narrative for the person watching the feed, downgrading herself from an operator to a bystander who got a lucky shot. Then, she walked out into the harbor line rain, the smell of damp concrete, a relief. She pulled her collar tight and dialed a number from memory. "Juno, it's me. I need a favor. I need you to find out who owns the serial on a security camera at the Lark and Anvil. The one on the main ceiling. Yeah, the dome. I need to know where it's streaming." Back in the wine room, Silas Rourke stood in the darkness, the only light coming from the rain-slicked docks outside. Pilar was gone. He was alone. Listening to the chime of his phone, he answered. "Rourke." A filtered voice on the other end, official and cold. "Silas, this is a courtesy call from the Mid-Atlantic Organized Crime Board. We're getting chatter. This attempt tonight wasn't from any of the families. It was an outside player." "I figured," Silas said. "They're called the Heliotrope Syndicate, and, Silas, they don't just bid on contracts, they acquire them. Be careful who you trust." The call ended. Silas stared at the empty doorway where Noah Quinn had stood, the woman who was either incredibly brave, incredibly reckless, or something else entirely. Noah's loft apartment smelled of rain, old books, and the faint, sharp scent of ozone from the elevated train that passed 2 blocks away. She double-locked the door, the sound of the deadbolt sliding home, a small, solid comfort in the humming quiet. She hung her damp uniform, the white apron, the black shirt, and for a moment just stood in the dark, letting her eyes adjust, letting the adrenaline from the lark and anvil finally recede, leaving a residue of cold clarity. Her movements were ritualistic. She went to a worn wooden chest at the foot of her bed and lifted the lid. It was not full of mementos. It was a toolbox. Inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, were a few high-density data drives, a set of miniature optics, and a single laminated ID card. She picked up the card. The photo showed a younger Noah, her hair longer, her expression blank, institutional. The name was different. The title was what mattered. Horizon Mirage Casino Surveillance. Analyst, 3rd floor. Eye in the sky, she murmured to the empty room. A life she had surgically removed, a past she had buried under the mundane identity of a waitress, a life that had just found her again. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A secure message from Juno. Got it. Domecam is third-party hardware, not on the Anvil's network. It's streaming a single, encrypted feed. Took me a while, but I bounced the signal. The server is in Providence, Rhode Island, masked behind a holding company for a 24-hour car wash. Whoever they are, they're not amateurs. Noah stared at the message. Providence. Not local. This was bigger than a simple territory dispute. She plugged a drive into her laptop and began to build a timeline, a simple wireframe of the event. She focused on the attack, the entry, the execution, and the one detail that bothered her the most. She messaged Juno again. Check the Anvil's internal power logs for tonight, 8 p.m. to 8:30. The reply came back in less than a minute. Weird. Micro outage. 90 seconds. Exactly 90 seconds. Started 1 minute before the men walked in. Not a surge. A scheduled dip. Power to the internal cameras and metal detectors went offline, but not the dome. Noah's fingers tightened. An admin-level maneuver, she whispered. Someone with high-level access to the building's automation system had to physically schedule that dip. It was a digital key, clearing the path. This was an inside job. Her personal phone, the one Silas Rourke now had the number for, lit up. A single text from him. One of the three, the one with the broken hand, his arrest was faked. He was released from central booking less than an hour ago. Too fast. He was feeding her information, or he was testing her. Maybe both. He was confirming what she already knew. The hand inside the restaurant was connected to a hand inside the system. Noah closed her eyes, replaying the scene. Not her own actions, but his. Silas Rourke, when the first shot was fired, he did not duck. He did not shield himself. His first move was to look at his kitchen door, to glance toward the stockroom. He was not afraid of the bullet. He was afraid of who it would pass through to get to him. She saw it clearly now, and he was protecting his staff, the cooks, the dishwashers, the delivery drivers, the legitimate side of his world. The attack was aimed at the boss, but the collateral damage he feared was not his business, but his people. The thought settled on her, heavy and complicated. The next day, she called in sick to the restaurant. She needed to see the other half of his world, the harbor line. She spent the afternoon on a walkway overlooking the city port, the wind cold, smelling of diesel fumes and the dead salt tang of the deep harbor. His company, Lark Holdings, managed 2 of the largest shipping terminals. It was a massive automated operation, and it was vulnerable. She watched as a bright blue, 50-ton automated crane, a silent workhorse, suddenly glitched. Its magnetic locks disengaged. A 20-foot container of what was likely auto parts swung wildly, its safety tethers snapping. It slammed into a row of stacked containers, the sound a dull, echoing boom. Dock workers ran, shouting, their voices lost in the wind. This was no accident. This was sabotage. Noah raised the mini binoculars from her box. She focused on the control tower, then on 2 men in bright orange vests arguing near the damaged crane. They were too far to hear, but she did not need to. She watched their mouths, the practiced, silent language of casino floors. Level -2. Noah packed her binoculars. Level -2 was the city port data hub, the central nerve center for the entire harbor, the place where the smart container bid was being processed, the place where a violet-purple ink stamp was required for entry, the place you could only access with a temporary, high-level pass from the Federal Corporate Integrity Bureau, a pass that Pilar Knox could easily borrow from one of her many official contacts. The pieces were not just connecting, they were fusing. Pilar, the over-friendly COO, was the one providing the access. She returned to her loft as the sun set, the city turning a cold, electric blue. Her anonymous text phone vibrated, the same restricted number as before. Meet at 2:07 a.m., Sandpiper Light Rail Station, alone. It was a setup. It was a trap. It was the only way forward. At 1:58 a.m., she was at the Sandpiper Station. It was elevated, exposed, a concrete island in the sky, desolate and windswept. She did not wait on the platform. She was in the shadows of the stairwell, watching the reflections in the darkened ticket machine. She heard the single footstep on the gravel path below before he spoke. He said to come alone. Noah did not flinch. Silas Rourke stepped out from under the platform, his shape distinct in the oppressive, sodium yellow light of the station. He was not dressed in his sharp suit, but in dark, functional clothes. He was alone. So did you, Noah said, walking down the stairs to meet him, her hands in her pockets. He looked up at the empty, echoing platform. This is a bad place for a meeting. I know. You're still going. It's the only lead. He watched her, the wind whipping his hair. His gaze was heavy, assessing not just her, but the entire situation, running the odds. The person you are meeting isn't the one who sent the message. I know that, too. He nodded. A small, sharp acknowledgement. He took a step back, melting into the deeper shadows by a concrete pylon, his presence already fading. His voice was low, carrying just enough to reach her. If you go, go like a ghost. It was the first time he had used the intimate you. It was the first time he had spoken to her not as a boss, not as a suspect, but as something else, an accomplice. The Sandpiper Light Rail Station was a skeletal ribbon of concrete and steel, suspended over the dark, sleeping city. At 2:07 in the morning, it was utterly desolate. The wind was the only passenger, carrying the sharp tang of the harbor and the faint smell of cold ozone from the tracks. Noah was not on the platform. She was tucked into the deep shadows of the stairwell, her eyes on a small, convex mirror she had placed on the landing. It gave her a distorted, 180-degree view of the entire, empty walkway above. She waited. Silas Rourke was a denser shadow 30 yards away, motionless, blending seamlessly with the concrete support pillars. He was a ghost, just as he had asked her to be. The footsteps arrived at 2:10, frantic and arrhythmic. A thin man in a city port security jacket stumbled onto the platform, his breath pluming. He spun in a tight circle, his eyes wide with animal panic. "Hello, I'm here. I'm here." Noah emerged, moving silently up the steps. "You're late." The man, Coulter Vale, physically recoiled, his hand flying to his chest. I got lost. I thought—" His gaze darted past her, into the darkness where Silas stood, and his panic amplified. "You're not alone. The message said—" He said, They said a lot of things, Noah said, her voice low and calm, trying to anchor him. "You're Coulter Vale, Cityport Infrastructure." "They hired me," Coulter whispered, the words tumbling out. "Heliotrope. They hired me for an audit. I thought it was a standard security test, but they didn't want the fixes. They wanted the flaws. They wanted the admin keys to level -2. "And you gave them," Noah stated. "No, I mean, yes, but I held back the final authorization string. I got scared." He was shaking violently now, his eyes scanning the rooftops. The people who helped them, they just disappear. They vanish from the system. Their access is revoked. Their apartments are empty. They just stop existing. I don't want to disappear. I want to redeem this. He fumbled in his pocket, pulling out a slim, silver data key. He slid it across the concrete toward her. "This is it, the real one. The key file to the master server room. In return, you have to get me out of the state. I have a sister in Ohio, Silas Rourke. He can do that, right? He can? Silas's voice rumbled from the shadows. Just as Coulter visibly relaxed, a bank of harsh, yellow sodium lights above the platform buzzed and flickered once, plunging them into a half-second of darkness. Noah did not wait for the sound. She heard the air move. A high-pitched, tearing whisper, a subtle change in the wind's steady moan. It was the sound that came a millisecond before the ballistic crack. "Down," she yelled. She grabbed the front of Coulter's jacket and yanked, pulling him off his feet and onto the cold concrete. In the same motion, she dove for the meager cover of the ticket kiosk. A chip of concrete exploded from the pillar behind where Coulter's head had been, stinging the air with dust. "Oh God, oh God!" Coulter screamed, curling into a ball. Silas was already flat against the widest support column, his own weapon in his hand. He did not fire. He was scanning, locating. "Rooftop," he bit out. "Warehouse, 400 yards. "They knew," Coulter sobbed. "They knew I was coming." "They knew someone was," Noah corrected, her mind icy and clear. The shot was professional. The shooter had accounted for the wind. She looked around, her eyes indexing. The shooter was high. They were low, but there, on a pole 30 feet away, was a city port transit camera, its red light blinking. The sniper was probably using it to spot. "Keep him down," Noah ordered Silas. She dug into her pocket and pulled out a quarter. "What are you doing?" Silas hissed, his eyes still scanning the roofline. "Luring the chase." She did not throw it at the sniper. She threw it at the camera. With a practiced, sharp flick of her wrist, she sent the coin spinning end over end. It glinted in the yellow light, a sudden, bright anomaly. It struck the camera's plastic housing with a loud, sharp tink. It was a classic misdirection, a chase lure from her old life. The sniper, focused through a scope, would be violently distracted by the sound. They would flinch. They would look at the camera, wondering if they were being watched by a second party. 400 yards away, the sniper did exactly that. They shifted, pulling away from the scope, their silhouette breaking the clean line of the roof. Silas did not miss it. He did not aim for the head. He did not aim for the chest. His weapon suppressed, barked once. A sound like a heavy book dropping. It was a precise, calculated shot aimed low. A scream cut through the night, high and sharp, followed by the clatter of a rifle on the warehouse roof. The silhouette vanished. Silas did not kill. He captured. He preferred leverage. Two of his men, materializing from an unseen car, were already moving toward the warehouse. They returned in under 5 minutes, half carrying a woman dressed in black tactical gear. She was clutching her thigh, her face a mask of pale, sweaty fury. They brought her to the base of the pillar and let her slump to the ground. "Sable," Silas said, recognizing her. "You took a contract on me." The woman, Sable, looked up and gave a choked, pained laugh. "You're getting soft, Rourke. You only winged me." "Who hired you, Heliotrope?" "Heliotrope is a ghost," she spat. "I just get my orders. Secure server, untraceable." "Check her gear," Silas ordered. One of his men pulled a small, hardened tablet from her vest. "Locked, boss." "It doesn't matter," Sable sneered, wincing as she shifted her leg. "It's just a contract. I only know the authorization code, the 2 letters signed on the wire transfer." Noah, who had been silent, stepped forward. "What letters?" Sable grinned, a painful, bloody expression. "P.K., just P and K. Now, am I getting a doctor, or are you going to let me bleed out on this charming platform?" The air went dead. "P.K., Pilar Knox." Noah's gaze snapped to Silas. His face was granite, unreadable, but his eyes were cold. The name hung between them, unspoken. The implications were enormous. His second in command, his COO. "Get her fixed," Silas said to his men, his voice flat. "Put her somewhere quiet and get Coulter Vale to Ohio. Use the back roads." His men and Coulter disappeared. The station was quiet again, save for the wind and the dark, spreading stain near Sable's discarded gear. Noah stood, the silver data key cold in her palm. She had what they needed. She turned to go. "Noah?" His voice stopped her. He was closer than she thought. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, a stark contrast to the night air. He reached out slowly. His gaze locked on hers. His fingers, warm and calloused, brushed the inside of her wrist, right where her pulse was hammering. It was not a grab. It was not a restraint. It was a touch. A jolt, sharp and electric, shot from her wrist to her shoulder, settling deep in her chest, her breath caught in her throat. His eyes widened, just slightly. He had felt it, too. In that one vibrating second, the station, the sniper, the betrayal of Pilar Knox, it all dissolved. There was only the sudden, undeniable gravity pulling them together, a silent, shared shock. Then, as quickly as it began, it was over. Silas pulled his hand back, clenching it into a fist at his side. They both looked away, breaking the contact, and the cold reality of the night rushed back in. The Trident warehouse was not a warehouse. It was a concrete bunker buried beneath a defunct shipping company, a place Silas Rourke kept off every map. The only sound was the percussive, deafening roar of the rain on the tin roof far above them, a constant drumming presence that sealed them off from the world. The air smelled of damp concrete, old machine oil, and the faint, coppery tang of blood. Silas was sitting on a steel work table, his jacket off. The bullet from the sniper had only grazed him, a 4-inch-long abrasion along his forearm where he had pressed it against the concrete pillar. It was bleeding sluggishly. Noah worked in the harsh, single-bulb light of the room, her movements economical. She had retrieved a medical kit from a cabinet, her hands perfectly steady as she opened antiseptic wipes, her focus absolute. But as she uncapped the bottle and poured the clear liquid onto a gauze pad, her fingers betrayed her. A slight, barely perceptible tremor. Silas, who missed nothing, watched the shake. "He almost had you," he said, his voice a low rumble under the rain. "He was 400 yards out. He misjudged the wind," Noah said, her voice clinical. She pressed the gauze to the cut. He hissed, a sharp intake of breath, but did not move. "This will sting." "It's not the first time." She began to wrap the wound with a clean bandage, her touch light but firm, the same precision she had used to disarm the gunman at the restaurant. "I made a promise to myself," Silas said, not to her, but to the empty room. "After my father, I promised I wouldn't let anyone get close. I wouldn't let anyone in my life, my real life, be in the line of fire." He looked at her, his gaze heavy, pinning her in place. "You're making me break that promise. Noah Quinn." She finished the wrap, her fingers lingering for a half-second on his skin. "I'm not in your life. I'm a complication." She tried to pull back, to reestablish the distance. She needed the sterile cold of the casino surveillance room. But his eyes held her. They were not the eyes of a mafia boss. They were the eyes of a man who had been alone for a very long time and had just seen something he could not categorize. Every defense she had, her training, her detachment, her carefully constructed anonymity crumbled under that look. The space between them, which had been a professional void, was now charged, the air thick with unspoken things. He did not move. He did not have to. She was the one who leaned in, just a fraction of an inch. He read the signal. Slowly, he raised his uninjured hand, not to grab her, but to rest it on her shoulder blade. His thumb brushed the seam of her shirt. It was a question, asked in the most basic, tactile language. She could feel the warmth of his palm through the thin fabric, a steady, solid presence. Her own hand, the one that had just bandaged him, came up. She hesitated, then laid her fingers lightly against the hard line of his jaw. His skin was rough with stubble. She felt the muscle underneath it clench at her touch. They stayed like that for a long, silent moment. The rain hammered the roof, their breath fogged in the cold air. It was a pause, a final check. She looked into his eyes and he looked into hers, a shared, silent nod. He met her halfway. The first kiss was not a collision, it was a discovery. It was not rushed or desperate. It was slow, tentative, and deeply intentional. It was just the warm, firm pressure of his lips against hers, a stark contrast to the cold air and the smell of rain. Her back found the rough-hewn wooden door of the safe house, the old wood pressing into her shirt. His hand moved from her shoulder, his fingers tangling in her short hair, tilting her head. He broke the kiss, pulling back just enough to speak, his forehead resting against hers. His voice was rough. "If you don't want this—" "I'm here," she whispered, and it was the truest thing she had said in years. She closed the distance this time. The second kiss was deeper, a release of the tension that had been building since the first shattered bottle at the Lark and Anvil. His other arm came around her, pulling her against him, and her jacket slithered from her shoulders, pooling at her feet on the concrete floor. Her fingers laced behind his neck, her body molding to his. It was all sensation, the strength in his arms, the slow, deliberate movement of his mouth, the solid wall at her back. There was no thought of past or future, only the absolute, undeniable present. The roar of the rain on the roof was the only sound, a drumming pulse that matched the beat of her own heart, a perfect cover for the intimacy of the moment. It felt safe. It felt voluntary. It felt real. A long, mournful train whistle cut through the storm, the sound a distant echo from the world above. The sound broke the spell. They pulled apart, slowly, reluctantly. Neither one looked away. Noah rested her forehead against his, her eyes closed, her breath coming in short, uneven gasps. "Don't let this blind you, Silas," she murmured, the words heavy with the weight of her past. "Feelings, they get in the way of the analysis." He let out a low, sad laugh, a smile touching his lips but not his eyes. "Sometimes," he said, his thumb brushing a strand of hair from her temple. "It's the only thing that helps you see the right person." They stood in the quiet, the rain their only witness. "A rule," Noah said suddenly, pulling back just enough to see his face. If we're doing this, one rule." "What?" "Harsh, severe, total honesty. No life or death secrets. I don't work well when I'm being managed." He looked at her, his expression serious. "Pilar, she's Kay. She's been with me for 10 years. She's family, and I think she tried to have me killed tonight. That's my truth. Is it harsh enough? It's a start," Noah said, as if summoned by the thought. Her personal phone, the one with the encrypted data key from Coulter, buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, a single system-level notification. "Alert. An unknown command is attempting to access the file." Someone was already inside. The next night, 3 shadows detached themselves from the loading docks and moved toward the city port service entrance. Silas, Noah, and Coulter Vale. The air was cold, tasting of salt and diesel. "The main stairwell is out," Coulter whispered, his voice shaking, clutching his small notebook. "It's all biometric." "We are not using the stairs," Noah said. She led them to a grated maintenance shaft, the lock of which she picked with 2 small, steel tension pins in under 10 seconds. The shaft smelled of rust, damp, and the faint, unmistakable tang of ozone. Level -2 was not a floor. It was a concrete tomb, a humming, refrigerated brain. They moved through a dark maintenance corridor, their footsteps echoing. The first checkpoint was a steel door with a glowing red keycard scanner. "My card is flagged," Coulter said, his voice a high-pitched squeak. "The second I use it, they know." "Give it to me," Noah said. He handed her the plastic card. Noah held it in her left hand, along with a near-identical blank card from her own kit. She approached the scanner, her body angled away from the security camera 20 yards down the hall. In one fluid motion, her right hand came up to steady her left. It was a classic magician's pass. Her right fingers concealed the swap, palming Coulter's card as her left hand slid the blank. cloned card through the reader. The scanner beeped and flashed green. She repeated this twice more, a clean, silent breach. They entered the server room. The sound hit them, first a massive, cord-like hum from 100 humming server racks, a high, electrical whine that set their teeth on edge. The air was frigid, the only light a galaxy of blinking, hypnotic green LEDs. Coulter, pale and sweating in the cold, moved to the main terminal. His hands, slick with fear, fumbled at the keyboard. "The key string," he stammered. "It's 256 characters." "Then start typing," Silas growled, his eyes scanning the room, his hand never leaving the inside of his jacket. Coulter typed. His fingers moved in a frantic, terrified blur, a password he had clearly memorized in panic. The screen flashed, "Access granted." "I'm in," he breathed. "Get up." Noah took the seat. Her fingers moved with a different kind of energy. Calm. Economical. Precise. "I'm accessing the live camera grid." Her eyes scanned the monitors she had called up. "There. The restaurant. The dome camera is still active." "They are watching the restaurant?" Silas asked. "No," Noah said, her eyes narrowing. "They are. They are routing the feed. It's streaming to an external IP, a ghost server." She brought up a new window. "Now, Awane, we find the person on the inside." She did not hack. She baited. She created a small, corrupted file. It was disguised as an image, a scanned document, a fake contract between Silas Rourke and Raleigh Freight, his primary, legitimate competitor. She labeled it Raleigh_final_terms_confidential, JPG, and planted it on the Lark Holdings executive-level shared drive, a digital honeypot. "What is that?" Silas asked. "Bait. The leak inside your company will be monitoring all high-level file traffic, looking for signs that you are compromised. They will not be able to resist seeing if you are making a deal with your biggest rival." She sat back, her hands in her lap, watching the access log. The server racks hummed. "We wait." "We do not have," Silas began. "It's done," Noah said, her voice flat. A new line of code appeared on her screen. Access 10.1.5.22. "Got them," she whispered. Her fingers flew, tracing the internal protocol address. "It's an internal IP, Lark Holdings, 30th floor, executive suite, corner office." "Pilar," Silas said. The name was ice. The confirmation was absolute. Pilar Knox's machine. "We have what we need. Let's go," Silas ordered. Coulter wiped the logs. Noah scrubbed their digital trace. They were halfway back up the maintenance stairwell when the world exploded in noise. A deafening, high-low wail. The alarms. Bright, red lights began to strobe, painting the concrete walls in blood. "How?" Coulter shrieked. "We were clean." "It was triggered remotely," Noah yelled over the sound. "They did not know we were coming in. They knew we were in. They were waiting for us to access the file." Heavy footsteps thundered on the landing above them. A beam from a heavy flashlight cut through the darkness. "Security freeze." Silas reacted instantly. He saw a shallow alcove in the wall, a recess for a fire suppression unit. He grabbed Noah by the arm and threw her into it, pressing his body flush against hers, shielding her. Coulter scrambled in behind them, a whimpering ball. The space was impossibly small. Noah was crushed between the cold concrete and the solid, unyielding heat of Silas. Her hands were flat against his chest, his heart hammering a frantic, wild beat against her palms. He had one arm braced by her head, the other around her waist. His hand clamped over her mouth to muffle her breathing. Two security guards ran past, their heavy boots pounding the metal steps, their flashlights and shouts filling the stairwell. They did not see the shadows hidden in the shadow. In the dark, pulsing red of the alarm, all of Noah's senses were on fire. She could feel the hard muscle of his chest, the panicked, raw strength in his grip. She could smell him. Not cologne, but the scent of wool, soap, and the sharp, metallic tang of his own adrenaline. He had his head down, tucked near hers. She felt his breath, hot and fast against her hair. And in that moment, all Silas could register was her. The absolute stillness of her body, poised even in panic, the feeling of her, small and solid, against him. And the scent from her hair, a clean, sharp smell of mint. It cut through the concrete dust and the fear. The world dissolved to this single, suffocating point of contact. The footsteps faded. Silas waited 1, 2, 3 beats. He released her. The loss of contact was a physical shock. "Go," he ordered. They burst out of the maintenance hatch into the cold, clean night, the alarms of the city port wailing behind them. "We are clear," Silas said, breathing heavily, turning to his small team. But the team was gone. Coulter Silas spun. Noah was already looking down. On the damp pavement, just by the hatch, lay a small, black, leather-bound notebook. "He's gone," she said. She picked it up. Coulter had vanished in the seconds it took to open the hatch. He knew he would not make it. This was a dead drop. She opened the back cover. Tucked into a leather sleeve was a single, tiny micro SD card. Back at the Trident warehouse, she plugged it into a reader. One file, a video. The quality was poor, shaky, filmed from a distance, no audio. The location was the abandoned St. Indigo Chapel. The timestamp was from 1 week ago. She saw Pilar Knox, her face pale and strained, standing by the ruined altar. A man in a simple, gray suit stood with his back to the camera. Pilar was gesturing wildly, crying. The man in gray said something. He handed her a small, dark object, a data key. Pilar took it, her hand shaking. The video ended. Silas stared at the frozen image of his COO, his most trusted associate, taking a package from a ghost. "She is compromised," he said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "I'm going to her office. I am going to end this." He moved toward the door. "Stop." He turned. Noah was standing by the laptop, her expression as cold and analytical as the server room. "You are still missing the most important piece," she said. "You have the how, you have the what, you still do not have the why. We saw that video. That was not a traitor. That was a woman who was desperate and terrified. If you go in now, all you are doing is triggering the next trap." The 30th floor of Lark Holdings was a world of silent, pressurized glass, Silas Rourke's legitimate empire. Noah was there as his new risk management consultant, a title so vague it screamed suspicion. Pilar Knox stood at the head of a massive, black onyx conference table, her voice the picture of calm competence, delivering a flawless quarterly logistics projection. Noah was not listening. She was watching, not Pilar, but Pilar's faint reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the harbor. Pilar was a fortress. Her smile was precise, her gestures economical, her eye contact perfectly distributed to every member of the executive team. But she never looked at Silas, and she never looked at her own reflection. "And finally," Silas said, his voice flat, reading from the agenda, "the semi-annual review of our personnel insurance and disability claims. Pilar." It was a standard, boring item, but in the glass. Noah saw the shift. It was not a flinch, it was an imposition of stillness. Pilar's smile remained, but at the corner of her left eye a new, fine web of wrinkles appeared, a fractional tightening of muscle as she fought an internal, massive pressure. Her blink rate, which had been steady, stalled for 1, 2, 3 seconds. The trigger, insurance. 10 minutes later, they were in Silas's private office. The door was locked, the soundproofing engaged, reducing the world to a heavy, expensive silence. "It's the insurance," Noah said, standing by the window. "That's the key." Silas did not respond. He walked to a bar, poured 2 glasses of water, and handed one to her. He was watching the docks, the same view as from the conference room, but his gaze was fixed on a specific loading crane by Pier 4. "Last year," he said, his voice quiet, stripped of its command, "a subcontractor was cutting corners. Standard procedure, Shoddy rigging, a container crane. It wasn't one of my men, but it was on my dock. He paused, the memory clearly a heavy weight. Pilar. She was engaged to a man named David. He was the dock foreman. He was right under it. The story settled in the air, cold and heavy. She was the one who found him, Silas continued, his voice now a low gravel. The company fought the claim. The insurance carrier denied the payout, a safety procedure violation. They found a technicality on a form and ruled him negligent. They wiped him away with a signature. Noah finally understood. She looked at the man who commanded the city's shadows, now just a man staring at a ghost. She's not a traitor, Silas, Noah said, her voice softening. She's a mourner. She's not after your money. She wants revenge. On the system, the one that let a man die and then called him negligent to save a few $1,000s. So she's burning it all down, he reasoned, his jaw tight, and starting with me. No, she's being used. Heliotrope didn't buy her loyalty. They weaponized her grief. They promised her justice. And in return, she became the drill they used to get inside your walls and inside the city port. Her anonymous phone, the one she kept in her pocket, buzzed. A text from the same restricted number. Want to save him? Stop the Ledger Hall signing tonight, 7 o'clock. Noah looked up from the phone, her blood cold. It's tonight, the city port contract. They're making their move. She looked at Silas. You have to cancel. You can't sign it. No. The word was absolute. Silas. That's the trap. They've sabotaged the cranes. They've compromised the data hub. Your signature is the final piece. You'll be validating a corrupted system, giving Heliotrope the legal cover they need to take over the entire harbor. And if I do not sign, he countered, his anger rising, the boss returning, if I am a no-show to the biggest municipal contract in a decade, Cityport terminates my lease. They void my licenses. Lark Holdings, the legitimate part. Noah, it vanishes. 2,000 people. 2,000 jobs. People with families. People who work those docks. They're gone. I will not sacrifice them to save my own skin. So you'll sacrifice them to Heliotrope instead? She shot back, stepping into his space. How many more Davids will there be when they control the data, when they can shut down safety protocols from a server in Providence? Those 2,000 jobs will not matter if they are dead. He was trapped. She saw it, trapped by his own legitimate success, by his responsibility. He paced, a lion in a cage of his own making. She stepped in front of him, stopping him. Her voice was not loud, but it was sharp as a shard of glass. If your signature is the price for their blood, Silas, I will break your pen. He froze, and he looked down at her, at the absolute cold certainty in her eyes. The anger in his gaze drained away, replaced by the calculating, analytical focus she had seen at the Sandpiper station. He looked at the heavy, gold-nibbed pen on his desk. Then we don't break the pen, he said, a new, dangerous energy in his voice. We change the ink. He strode to his desk. We do not cancel, we go, but we sign a different contract. Noah was already moving, sitting at his terminal. Heliotrope is a data syndicate, so we cut off their data. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, her old life, the eye in the sky, taking over. We add an addendum, a last-minute rider. She typed, her voice a rapid-fire explanation. 1, a data antitrust clause. It mandates all logistics data be mirrored and audited by a non-affiliated, independent third party in real time. 2, a transparency rider. It forces all partners to declare any and all back-channel server access. If an anomaly is found, the partner faces catastrophic, immediate financial penalties. It makes secrecy impossible. Heliotrope will never sign that, Silas said, reading over her shoulder. Exactly, Noah said, hitting print. They will not, but the city port authorities, in public, will have to. You will look like a champion of transparency. We are calling their bluff. We are forcing them to either expose themselves or walk away from the table. An hour later, they were at Ledger Hall. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and new money. City officials, Lawyers and logistics partners filled the room. Before the signing, Silas, as was protocol, handed the tablet with the last-minute addendum to his COO for a final review. Pilar Knox took it. She read the first clause. Her professional smile remained. She read the second. Her face did not change, but her hand, the one holding the tablet, began to shake, a violent, uncontrolled tremor. She stared at the words, the legal trap Noah had built. She saw her revenge, her pain, all of it, suddenly boxed in. Her head lifted, her eyes wide, searching the crowd. She found Noah, standing in the shadows by the back wall. It was a look of pure, unadulterated recognition. Pilar knew. She knew that Noah knew everything. The tablet slipped from her grip, clattering onto the polished table. Pilar Knox turned, not to Silas, not to the stage, but to the side exit. She shoved the door open and ran. Noah did not wait for Silas to be clear of the cameras. The moment Pilar ran, Noah was moving, a shadow slipping through the panicked, confused crowd at Ledger Hall. Silas was trapped, a public figure at the center of a failed ceremony, which gave her the cover she needed. She tracked Pilar through the downtown streets, a desperate, frantic flight. Pilar was not a professional. She ran with her head down, her movements clumsy, her path predictable. She was running toward the only place of penance she had left. The St. Indigo Chapel was a skeleton of a building, a condemned Gothic shell in a neighborhood the city had forgotten. The sound of a new, sharp crack, not old wood settling, but fresh glass breaking echoed from inside. Noah slipped through the gap where a stained glass window had been, landing silently on a floor thick with plaster dust and the cold, waxy smell of 1,000 dead candles. Pilar was at the altar, sweeping her arm across its surface. Votive holders and a heavy brass cross crashed to the marble. "No!" she screamed, a sound of pure, undiluted anguish. On the altar, held down by rocks, was a diagram of the city port, marked in red with stress points, and surrounding it, like a morbid shrine, were 4 photographs. One was of a smiling, dark-haired man in a hard hat, David. "Pilar," Noah said, her voice quiet, absorbing the sound in the vast, dusty space. Pilar spun, her face a ruin of tears and terror. You followed me. Get away." "He trusted you. Pilar, he trusted you with everything." "I did not want to break him." Pilar's voice was a raw wound. "I wanted to break the game, the whole dirty, filthy system that lets men like David die and then calls them negligent." She slammed her fist on the altar, on the picture of the man she loved. "Heliotrope promised me justice. They said they would expose the insurance fraud. They promised they would ruin the men who signed that paper. They promised—" Her voice broke. "And then they betrayed me. They do not care about justice. They just want the port." A slow, deliberate single clap echoed from the darkness of the nave. "Such passion, Pilar. It is, frankly, exhausting." A man stepped from the deep shadows by the baptismal font. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored gray suit, his hair neat, his face unremarkable. He looked like an auditor. Only his eyes were wrong, flat, colorless, and ancient. This was Mr. Oakes. His voice was as dry as his suit, a soft, papery whisper. She was a tool, you see, a compromised, emotional, and ultimately unreliable tool. He did not look at Pilar. His gaze was fixed, with an almost academic curiosity, on Noah. "But you," he continued, taking a step closer, "you are fascinating. Noah Quinn, or should I use the name on your Horizon Mirage surveillance license? You were the best eye in Vegas. They said, until you saw something you should not have." Noah's blood went cold. He knew her past. "Pilar was a hammer," Oakes said, dismissing her with a wave. "Heliotrope needs a scalpel. We need an eye in the sky to oversee the entire harbor. The position is yours. We will give you the power that Pilar only dreamed of. All you have to do is step aside." Noah's mind was racing. She needed time. She needed evidence. Her hand moved in her pocket, her thumb sliding across the screen of her phone, activating the audio recorder. Power, Noah said, her voice steady. Why go through all this, the sabotage, the sniper? You just wanted the bid. Oakes smiled, a thin, dry expression. The bid is a formality. We needed chaos. We needed Silas Rourke, the great untouchable boss of the Harbor Line, to be publicly shamed. We needed him to look weak, to look compromised, in front of the Mid-Atlantic Organized Crime Board. He was walking closer. When the MAOCB severs their unofficial ties, when they see him as a liability, there will be a vacuum, and Heliotrope will be the only entity qualified to take that contract, unconditionally. It was the confession, the motive, the final piece. A compelling offer, Noah said, taking a step back. It is not an offer, Oakes said, his smile vanishing. It is the new reality. He gestured. 2 men emerged from the ruined pews, large, heavy figures. Take them both. The woman first. Pilar can wait. They were shoved into a dark, cramped vestry, the air thick with the smell of mold. The men were efficient, tying their wrists behind a heavy wooden chair, back to back, plastic zip ties, pulled so tight they bit. Mister, Oakes will be with you shortly. One man grunted and shut the door, plunging them into near total darkness. Pilar was sobbing, a high, thin sound. I'm sorry, I am so sorry. I did not mean... Quiet, Noah whispered, her voice a sharp command, and stay perfectly still. Noah twisted her head. Pilar, in my hair, on the left side. There is a barrette. Can you get it? Pilar, confused, fumbled, her bound hands bumping Noah's head. I think so. Pull it! Pilar did. A simple black plastic hair clip dropped into Noah's lap. Noah contorted, her casino-trained fingers finding the small object. She snapped it in half. It was not a weapon. It was an escape tool, something from a street magician's kit. Inside the plastic was a thin, 1-inch shard of black ceramic, a thread cutter. It was not military. It was subtle. She began to saw at the zip tie, the ceramic biting into the plastic. The door flew open. One of the guards stood silhouetted. Oakes wants the new one, now. The plastic tie snapped. Noah exploded. She was not a brawler, she was a fulcrum. She used the man's own momentum, surging forward, driving her shoulder into his knee. A casino takedown. He buckled with a scream. Pilar, Noah yelled, spinning, the ceramic blade flashing as she sliced the ties on Pilar's wrists. Run! They burst out of the vestry into a narrow hallway behind the altar. A shot rang out, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Dust and plaster exploded from the wall. This way, Pilar screamed, yanking Noah into a dark alcove as a second bullet sparked where Noah's chest had just been. They were a frantic, unholy alliance. They reached the main hall. The second guard blocked the massive front doors, raising his weapon. Pilar, in a surge of desperate rage, grabbed a heavy, 3-foot-tall brass candlestick and hurled it, screaming David's name. The man flinched, and Noah moved, driving him back against the door, jamming it shut. They crashed through the broken side window, into the cold, open courtyard. Oakes was there, his face a mask of cold fury. Stop them! But headlights flooded the yard, a horn blared, loud as a freighter, a massive black work truck, a heavy-duty model used for hauling, fish-tailed on the gravel, cutting Oakes off. The passenger door flew open. Silas. Noah, get in now. The truck bed was full. It was not gunmen. It was 4 men in heavy canvas coats and steel-toed boots, his dock workers. They piled out, armed with tire irons and heavy, solid steel spud wrenches. This was not his crew. This was his company. Pilar, Silas said, his voice ice. She flinched, but scrambled into the truck bed. Noah vaulted into the passenger seat. The truck roared to life, tires spitting gravel. Oakes's men were met by a wall of loyal, angry labor. As they swerved out of the gate, Oakes was on the curb, his gray suit immaculate, his face tight with rage. He had left something on the hood of his own car, a small, black, multi-antenna device. Closer, Noah yelled. Silas stomped the brake. Swerving the truck, Noah leaned out, her arm at full stretch, her fingers just brushing the device. She hooked it, yanking it into the cab as Silas floored the accelerator. "What in God's name is that?" Silas yelled, "running a red light." Noah clutched the box, breathing hard. "The dome camera," she said, a cold smile touching her lips. "It is the bridge. Silas, we have their bridge." They were on the highway, the wind roaring through the cab, heading for the safety of the Trident, in the back. Pilar was a small, huddled shape between two silent dock workers. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a cold tremor in Noah's hands. There was a thin scrape on her cheekbone from where Pilar had shoved her into the alcove, a small bead of blood drying in the wind. Silas glanced over, his face grim. He was driving with one hand, with the other. He reached across the cab. His thumb, calloused and rough, found the cut. He did not dab. He pressed firmly, wiping the dried blood away. Noah froze. The touch was not gentle. It was solid. It was grounding. It was a jolt of pure, physical reality after the chaos. She felt the warmth of his skin, the rough texture, and her breath hitched. She did not pull away. She leaned into the touch, her eyes closing for a single, fleeting second. He kept his hand there, his thumb resting on her cheek, a silent, binding contract. Noah turned her head, just enough, and brushed her lips against the inside of his wrist. It was not a kiss. It was an answer, a promise. "We are still alive." Silas's jaw tightened. He gripped the wheel and accelerated. Miles behind them, "Mister?" Oakes watched the taillights disappear. His phone was to his ear. "They have the router. It does not matter. It was a decoy." He looked across the dark water, at the distant warm lights of the one place he knew that they would eventually go. "The grand reopening of the Lark and Anvil is next week. We will end everything, right where it began." The router Oakes had abandoned was a trap, and Noah Quinn knew it. "He let me take it," she said, her voice flat. They were in the Trident bunker, the air stale with concrete and tension. "It's not just a bridge. It's a loaded gun. He wants me to pull the trigger." "So we throw it in the harbor," Silas said. "No," Noah replied, plugging it into her isolated laptop. "We re-aim it." For the next 4 days, she did not sleep. She built a ghost. She cloned the router's signature and created a high-security data stream, a honeypot designed for an audience of one. She seeded rumors on the dark forums that Heliotrope frequented Silas Rourke seeing was rattled. The reopening of the Lark and Anvil was not a celebration. It was a liquidation. The rumors claimed Rourke would use the event to announce his true profit ledgers, broadcasting an encrypted feed of his offshore accounts to secure his partners. "You're painting a target on your own back," Silas said, watching her fingers fly. "We are illuminating the target," she countered. "Oakes cannot resist this. He needs to know if you are truly broken. He'll have to watch. He'll have to tap the dome camera. And when he does, Juno will be waiting." Pilar Knox was a shadow in the bunker, her guilt a tangible, heavy presence. On the 3rd day, she approached Noah, who was cleaning the new set of comm pieces. Pilar's hands were shaking as she held out a single, steel-gray hard drive. "Coulter's video was a warning," Pilar whispered, her voice raw. This is the evidence. All of it. The wire transfers Heliotrope used to bribe the insurance auditors, the logs showing they denied David's claim, knowing it was false. It's the why." "Why give this to me?" Noah asked, not taking it. "Because of what he's doing." Pilar's voice broke. "The reopening. He's announcing the David Knox Harbor Safety Fund. He's using his own money to pay the claims the insurance company denied. He's turning my sin into a legacy for David." She forced the drive into Noah's hand. "I will cooperate. I will stand up in court and say every word, but you have to promise me. Keep me out of a cage. I am not asking for absolution. I am asking for a chance to fix what I broke." Noah closed her hand over the drive. "You help us stop Oakes tonight, Pilar, and I will make sure your testimony is the only thing they see." The night of the reopening was cold, the sea breeze sharp. The Larkin anvil was transformed, the glass room was gone, replaced by an open patio. The crowd was not the elite, it was the dock workers, the kitchen staff, the drivers, and their families. Silas was making a statement. This was a community, not a fortress. Juno was set up in the corner, her DJ rig a camouflage for a powerful mesh network, a private, digital web that she had cast over a 3-block radius, invisible to any outside scan. Near the entrance, 2 men in unremarkable suits nursed club sodas. They were not Silas's. They were Mayo CB. They were here, by invitation, to observe. An hour before the doors opened, Noah gathered the staff. "Tonight we are introducing a new item," she said, her voice cutting through the kitchen chatter. "The harbor smoke. It's a game. When the music cuts out and you hear this bell," she rang a small service bell, "you have 90 seconds. You smile. You tell the guests it's the cold smoke show. And you guide everyone to the patio. Fast. Safest and fastest team gets a bonus." The staff laughed, but the head chef, a man loyal to Silas, saw the precision in her eyes. This was not a game. It was a 90-second evacuation drill, disguised as service. At 9 o'clock. Silas stepped onto the small platform where the glass room had been. The music faded. "Welcome back." His voice was steady, amplified just enough. This restaurant was built to be strong. It was secure. It was safe. And it failed. He paused. His eyes scanned the crowd, passing over the workers, the Mayo CB agents, and found her. Noah was standing by the service exit, her black dress making her just another shadow. She was a coiled spring. His gaze locked on hers. "Trust," he said, and the entire room felt the shift in his voice. "Is not a wall. It is not a vault. It is a bridge. It is what you build after the glass shatters." It was a confession. It was a promise. It was for her. He held her gaze, and in front of everyone he gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "The trap is set. I am in place." Noah's breath caught. She nodded back. "I see you." Her earpiece crackled, Juno's voice a whisper. "Noah, we have a bite. A high-gain antenna just powered on. Rooftop, building across the street. He's tapping your fake data stream." A second passed. And bingo. The dome eye is online. The real one, Oaks, is streaming from it. He is watching Silas from the roof across the street. "I have the ID. It's him. We have him." "Pilar," Noah whispered into her wristcom, "move." Silas continued to speak, his voice a calm, steady anchor, holding the entire room's attention. He was the perfect living bait. Noah melted from the doorway. Pilar met her by the kitchen, her face pale but resolute. Coulter Vale, who had been hiding in plain sight at a back table, separated himself from the crowd, his anxiety radiating. He was their guide to the building across the street. "He's across the street, on the roof," Noah said, her voice a low, urgent hum. "He thinks he is the hunter. He is the target." They did not go out the front. They went down, into the basement, and up the service stairs of the adjoining building. The wind hit Noah as she cracked the roof door of the target building. The salt spray was cold on her face. Across the alley, she could see Silas, a lone, exposed figure on a stage, bathed in light. The clock in her head was counting down. All the threads, Pilar's grief, Oaks's ambition, Silas's trust were pulling tight, converging on this single, wind-swept point. The wind on the rooftop was a physical thing, a cold shove that smelled of the deep harbor. Across the alley, Silas was a single illuminated target on the stage. Mr. Oaks was not watching him. He was kneeling, his back to the ledge, connecting a smoking device to a large industrial propane tank. He was staging an accident, Mutt. "You should not cover your mouth when you are speaking on camera." Noah's voice cut the wind. Oaks spun, his gray suit immaculate, his composure shattering. He had not heard her. "Pilar," and Coulter ascend the final steps. "You," he hissed, his hand flying to the earpiece. "I saw you on the dome feed when you were testing the connection." Noah stepped out of the stairwell's shadow. "You were practicing." She recited the sequence she had lip-read hours earlier. Alpha Tango 904 execute. Oakes's face went pale. He tapped his earpiece, his voice a frantic whisper. "She is here, on the roof." A sharp, female voice crackled over the open channel, loud enough for Noah to hear in the sudden quiet. "Then finish it. Oakes, I do not care how. I am activating the security team now." Oakes froze, his eyes wide. "Vivian, we have a complication." Noah's mind connected the final wire. Vivian Sorrell, the corrupt port director, not just a partner, but the true head of Heliotrope. Vivian's laugh was like breaking glass. "I have already bought a private security team. They are entering the lobby as we speak. Your entire little community is about to be detained. Mr. Rourke," she sneered, clearly watching Silas on her own feed. But as 4 men in black tactical gear tried to breach the Lark and Anvil, they found their path blocked, not by gunmen, but by a silent, solid wall of dock workers, chefs, and drivers, standing shoulder to shoulder, Silas's community. The plan for hired violence had met a wall of legitimate labor. On the roof, Oakes realized the ground plan was failing. He pulled a compact pistol from his jacket. "An admirable effort," he whispered, his voice shaking, "but pointless." Noah was already analyzing the environment. The wind gusted from the west. Oakes was squinting against the harsh floodlights of the restaurant sign. To his left, a stainless steel cover for a ventilation duct. Oakes raised the gun. Noah moved, grabbing the heavy steel lid. She angled it, catching the bright neon glare of the sign, and focused it. A brilliant, blinding beam, directly into Oakes's eyes. He flinched, a half-second of pure, white blindness. It was all Silas needed. He exploded from the stairwell door, not as a brawler, but as a force, a choreographed piece of his own. He did not aim for Oakes. He aimed for the space he occupied. A stray shot from Oakes's struggle sparked off the concrete near Coulter. "Look out!" Pilar screamed, shoving Coulter Vale behind a heavy air conditioning unit, her allegiance sealed in steel. In the chaos, Oakes scrambled for the detonator. "It is over! Vivian Tuenda!" he yelled. "I'm activating the gas." Vivian's voice was pure ice over the comms. "Then do it." But as she hit her own execute command, Juno, listening from her DJ booth, intercepted the signal. She did not block it. She inverted it. Down at the party, the massive LED screen behind Silas meant for his speech flickered. It did not show the ledger. It showed the live feed from Vivian Sorrell's office computer. It showed her face, contorted in rage, as her voice boomed over the restaurant speakers. "I paid for the bribes. I paid for the sniper. I will not let Rourke." Juno's mesh network pushed the final file, the hard drive Pilar had provided, the bribery logs, the proof. The Mayo CB agents at the bar did not move. They simply watched, and one spoke quietly into his wrist. The bid was frozen. On the roof, Oakes heard his partner's confession booming from the street. He was broken, in a final, desperate act. He lunged, not at Silas, but at Noah, yanking her back, his arm around her throat, the gun to her temple. Silas froze. "Let her go!" "Drop it, Rourke, or I end her. Right here." Silas, his face pale, slowly bent, placing his weapon on the ground. He chose her. Noah was not struggling. She was calm. She locked eyes with Silas. "I am not afraid." She gave one single, deliberate blink. She knew this hold. It was the same as the street magician's escape. She did not fight the pressure. She used it. She exhaled completely, making her body smaller. She dropped her center of gravity, twisting her wrist into the hold, breaking his leverage. Oakes, suddenly holding a ghost, stumbled. Silas was already moving. He kicked his own gun away, and in the same motion, his hand snapped Oakes's wrist. The gun clattered. Silas slammed Oakes against the roof ledge, locking him in a clean, non-lethal hold. It was over. Downstairs, Vivian Sorrell tried to run. She burst from the front door only to be met by the dock workers. They did not touch her. They did not threaten. They just stood, a silent, unmoving circle of people. the new order of the harbor, blocking her escape. The storm had passed. Hours later, the police and the Maospi were gone. The Lark and Anvil was quiet. In the new kitchen, the air smelled of thyme and simmering stock. Steam rose from a large soup pot. Noah was leaning against the counter, watching the steam. She was tired, but she was still. Silas came up behind her. He did not startle her. His arm came around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. It was not a desperate grab, it was an assumption. It was natural. She leaned her head back against his shoulder, her hand coming up to cover his, their fingers lacing together. He bent his head, his lips brushing her temple. "You stayed," he whispered. She turned in his arms, her gaze meeting his. This time, there was no adrenaline, no rain, no danger, just the warm light of the kitchen. He kissed her. It was slow and steady and tasted of the safety they had built. It was a promise, no more running. The kitchen was quiet, but for the sound of the pilot light in the oven, a low, blue flame flickered to life. Outside, high above the dark harbor, the repaired neon sign of the Lark and Anvil sparked, hesitated, and then lit up, bathing the street in a steady, warm glow. The place where 3 men had attacked was now the place where 2 people had chosen to begin. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are listening from, so please comment below and share your thoughts so we can all connect. Please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. And if you want to help this story reach more people, please support us by hitting that hype button. We appreciate all of you.